Time for Grayson's Grades. They are brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats a Boardwalk deal online at boardwalkhonda.com. You can read all the grades right now at 973ESPN.com. Scott Grayson, what's up, man?
Mike, good to see you again. Obviously, football season is alive and well.
It is. And, man, I don't know what your expectations were for this season. A lot of people did not have high expectations. I, for one, said if the Eagles' offensive line can stay healthy, I think they can be competitive. And what's competitive? You can win 10 games with a healthy offensive line. That line yesterday, to me, was the difference in everything. It allowed the playmakers to do what they had to do. It allowed Hurts time. It allowed the running game to run. But that line has to stay healthy. So let's start with what you saw from the offensive line in yesterday's game.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback a little bit on what you were saying before, you and I seem to be kind of on the same page. I saw the over-under at the beginning of the season for Eagles wins at 6.5, and I thought, to me, that seems like a no-brainer to go over, especially when you're talking 17 games, the easy schedule, especially in the second half of the year. To me, I'm with you. I think this team has a chance to win 9 or 10 games. I felt that way before yesterday. I still feel that way. You're right. The offensive line is such a huge key. I've been yelling and screaming that Jordan Mailata needs to have gotten time before now. I'm so glad to see they finally settled on that. The guy looked good yesterday, and he clearly has a lot of room to grow because he's still learning. How crazy is that? The guy's still learning. And you look down the line, and how many times did we see Jason Peters tap out? And you start trickling down with the dominoes that fall from Jason Peters coming out in games last year and the years before. Guys don't trust the guy next to them. They try to make a block that maybe they otherwise might not have had to. And other injuries creep up. Was the offensive line perfect yesterday? No. Were they pretty good? Yeah. And if they play that way, you're right. They definitely will control the line of scrimmage. And I think, quite frankly, allow this offense to do what it's supposed to do. Allow Jalen Hurts to keep his eyes down the field, not have to worry too much about getting out of trouble. And clearly, they were good. This week, obviously, is going to be a different challenge for those guys, including Mailata with a guy named Nick Bosa. But that's next week's problem. For now, the grades are good. The offensive line got an A. Liked what I saw out of them for sure.
All right, let's look at some other individual efforts who got A's for you. And Jalen Hurts. I mean, last week, every week, it was Carson Wentz in the D category for the most part. We just saw a totally different game from that position in week one.
You're absolutely right. Biggest thing that I'm looking for to get to the 9-10 wins we were talking about with Jalen Hurts, just don't turn it over. If he doesn't turn it over, this team's got a chance to win every single game they play. Last year, they had short fields to deal with so many times, whether it was a turnover or the 4-and-outs or the 3-and-outs or the fourth down turnover on downs the Eagles would have occasionally. Jalen Hurts, to me, the biggest thing, no turnovers. I liked his decision-making. I stayed down the field. He looked to throw first, didn't look to run. It was a Russell Wilson-esque kind of performance. When it was time to run, he ran, and he made positive plays. And I heard Nick Sirianni talking just now a little bit ago about the biggest thing he noticed on film was that Jalen had the instincts to sense when guys were coming. It wasn't that he had to look at them. And he said when a guy can do that, that's when you know they're really playing the position well. So if Hurts is doing that in game one, I think we're in good shape. Now, it's one game, and one game does not make or break a season. It also does not write a narrative for a player, in my opinion. It was a great place to start for this season. I like the way Hurts handled himself. I like the way he's leading this team so far behind the scenes. And let's see if there's more of that next week.
All right. By the way, you gave the offensive line a B, and I guess that was in part because of the penalties.
The penalties, you're right. That's right. The penalties really bugged me. Lane Johnson, 3 of them. The pre-snap penalties can't happen. But, credit to the offense and the fact that last year that derailed drives in a hurry. They were able to overcome that. Now, you don't want to get yourself in that position repeatedly. That was the big knock that I had on the offensive line. You're right.
And by the way, an A for Jalen Hurts. Another guy who got an A was Devonta Smith. Now, Nick Sirianni just got done talking. He also went out to mention how well he blocked. He thought that was another thing. But I want to, he gets an A. He scores a touchdown. But route running, confidence. He said right off the bat, as soon as I saw man coverage, I knew this was a touchdown. You have a guy who has confidence and has the skill set to back it.
Absolutely, and he doesn't have the ego that's all about him. I like the way he's an unselfish player. He's obviously out there just trying to make the plays he can when the opportunities exist. The touchdown was great, and he got himself open. And having watched Devonta Smith run routes, it's fun if you like watching routes and seeing a guy get himself open. This guy has that capability. On that touchdown, Zach Ertz deserves a lot of credit for not drawing an offensive pass interference penalty and giving Devonta Smith the opportunity to create a window. The impressive thing to me was on the one drive a little bit later when Smith caught 4 passes in a row. That showed me the chemistry between Hurts and Smith is at a great place. And I don't know what the Falcons were doing not covering him, because clearly he was a popular target at that point in time. So, yeah, Smith's not going to be a guy that complains. He's going to be a guy who's going to take the opportunities that come his way when they can. I just love seeing younger players. This roster for a while, we all were saying they had to get younger. These skill players are younger, and they produced in week 1. It was really fun to watch.
It was, and let's go to the other receivers on this team, because Rieger, who was basically thought of to be a bust after the first season, the way that Sirianni kind of used him, he didn't get catches early, but later on in the game, he became a factor.
Yeah, and that screen pass for the touchdown, he did a great job of really reading the blocks that were in front of him. Obviously, Jordan Mailata laid the dude out, and Jason Kelsey had a great block on that play as well. But some of those screen passes, if you remember in the past with Doug Peterson, some of those players, including Rieger, were in such a hurry to get going downfield that they didn't stop and read the blocks. And I think the biggest thing, if you're looking for growth from Rieger, what I saw yesterday on that one play was a guy who had patience and waited and saw where the blocks were, read it, and then went. In the past, he would try to go so fast that he'd run right into a tackle. So that was a great thing to see there. And I'm looking for more out of Rieger. I think he will definitely have a better year than he did last year. It's hard not to. But you're looking for that sophomore growth. I want to see that out of Rieger, and I liked what I saw in that game.
These are Grayson's grades. You can get the full list of grades over at 973ESPN.com. We're just kind of going around to some things that stood out for the grades. And I do want to talk about Nick Sirianni, the head coach, and the game plan that he had. I mean, last year we would constantly be having Doug Peterson in that DF category, a team that just didn't have great game plan, not very creative. Now, I don't think he had a lot of help. I mean, the offensive line last year was a mess. I thought Wentz was terrible, which kind of poured it on Peterson. But I think Sirianni did a great job of accentuating the positives of what he has.
He really did. And I didn't, quite frankly, that's probably the biggest surprise I had was how well he managed the game, how well he had a flow on offense. And he had this team moving pretty much every time. There were times that drives would stall out, but at least they'd move the ball first a little bit. And what impressed me about Sirianni was the fact that the flow was there. He had this team pulling in the same direction. They really felt like they were on the same page as you watched them play. And quite frankly, the adjustments in game that you saw. Last year, I think Doug and, when you talk about the other side of the ball with Schwartz, they were so stubborn with, this is my game plan, I will succeed with it until I'm done banging my head against the wall and there's nothing left, or it works. And it didn't work. I thought with Sirianni there were adjustments made. There were good things that they did that set up plays later on. He impressed me with his ability there. And the question again is, okay, now there's stuff on film for the Niners from Sirianni in this offense and this playbook. What kind of things did he save to kind of roll out now next week? That's going to show me something next week against the Niners, is what kind of things you wrinkle off of that you ran this week.
Jonathan Gannon, you also gave an A. Now, early in the game, it looked like he might have been in a lower category. What did he do, though, that really impressed you that you gave him an A for? Because obviously, giving up 6 points, they gave up like under 300 total yards. How did they do it?
Well, I was really disappointed early on because, like you said about the offensive line, I really expected this defensive line to dominate as well. You had an inexperienced starter at center. You had a rookie starting at left guard, I believe. I expected the Eagles to just take full advantage of that inexperience and win that battle up front. They didn't on those first 2 drives. The defensive line looked awful, quite frankly. But when they had to, they did buckle down. They kept the Falcons out of the end zone. And again, the big key word here, adjustments. It's the word of the day. Gannon made some nice adjustments with how to restructure what they were going to do and how to conquer the Falcons' offensive line and get back there. I mean, eventually, that Brandon Graham tackle for a loss on that running back was huge. That was a big play that I started to get some confidence going for these guys. And then once this team, and the character, perhaps the narrative you see with this defense, once this offense got the lead, this defense pinned its ears back and just abused the Falcons, abused Matt Ryan. They got back there, got those 3 sacks in the fourth quarter, and quite frankly stomped on their throats and took away any desire to play the game. That is a key characteristic that you may remember from the Super Bowl team that the Eagles had, was when they got the lead, they'd step on teams, and they just became one-dimensional, and they'd conquer them. And I'm not saying that that's what this team is. I'm saying in week 1 here, that's what I saw. That's what I saw Gannon's mentality trickle down to these guys. And just like with the offense, the defense really seemed to be on the same page. You didn't see guys yelling at each other. You didn't see guys panicking at all. On either side of the ball, right off the get-go, they were composed. And it really looked to me like this team felt like it was going to win that game from the beginning.
I want to flip over to that defense, to some of the individual players. We just talked about Jonathan Gannon. Also, Fletcher Cox doesn't have a stat, but him and Hargrave, I thought you talked about the inexperience in the interior of their line. They took advantage of that really after the first 2 series of the game. I thought Fletcher Cox was getting doubled a lot, and Hargrave was just absolutely destructive. The 2 guys in the interior. Now, Fletcher didn't get a grade, but Hargrave ends up with the 2 sacks. He had a tackle behind the line of scrimmage, but the duo was a handful.
Yeah, and Hargrave does. You're absolutely right. And Hargrave doesn't do that unless Cox is taking up 2 large men at the time, and he always does. I mean, it's hard for me to grade Cox a lot because he doesn't show up in the stat categories, but he does all the little things that if he wasn't there, the other guys around him wouldn't have the success they do. Clearly that was the case with Hargrave. He was a beast because he was in a one-on-one battle, and he was able to take full advantage of it there late in the game. And Matt Ryan just didn't have time to do anything when they became a one-dimensional team, as I was talking about before. But I like that duo, Hargrave and Cox, and quite frankly, so many times I've even thrown the injury tent into the grades in the past. The biggest thing to me is this team came out of this essentially totally healthy after week 1. We haven't been able to say that a whole lot in the past. And you look at that defensive line, the depth that they have, it's all still intact. You talk about the offensive line, the depth that they have. Really, you need those starters to stay healthy. The depth may be a bit of a question, but they're all healthy. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for this offense and defense. If those lines can stay healthy, then they can have some success.
Yeah, you're right. The depth is going to be the question because their starting level offensive and defensive line, excellent. But if somebody gets hurt or multiple guys get hurt, the depth on this team certainly will be challenged, especially, Scott, if it gets into that secondary. Because I thought Slay and Nelson did a really good job yesterday.
Yeah, and you know what I really like, too, is as we were talking about Gannon earlier, is he really mixed up man and zone coverage. And they were on the broadcast talking a little bit about that with Slay. Once they got into, again, that one-dimensional offense, Slay did a great job of just picking the first down marker, planting his foot, and breaking on the ball. If there's anything to be disappointed about with those guys, I think at times there were some interceptions that could have been had. And obviously they're playing defense because they don't catch the ball as well, or else they'd be a receiver. But a lot of positives there. I like, for a long time we've been waiting. What are they going to do on the other side of corner? What are they going to do on the other side of corner all offseason? And it was finally late that they added Nelson. That was a huge pickup. I think it helps Slay's confidence. It helps that secondary's confidence as a whole. But you're right. Behind them, those guys have to stay healthy because it's a game changer if they're not.
It sure is. And obviously, I want to get your take. I don't know that anybody made the grades in terms of linebacker. I don't see one in there. Is that a concern, though, down the road? Because early in the game, they were getting beat up on the ground. Is that more because they're linebackers? Is that more because you said, the defensive line looked terrible early? What about Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson, the 2 linebackers?
Yeah, they really kind of seemed to settle down a little bit as well. And that's at the time I was disappointed in the defensive line, but then after the first possession, I kind of was asking myself, in the commercial break, while the Eagles were waiting to get the ball, was it the defensive line or was it linebackers not filling the holes as well? And I think it was probably more of that. And it's amazing how much as the game went on, they started to play better as a unit as well, the linebackers. No, I didn't give them a grade. I'd probably give them a B on the overall. Early on, I think it was probably more them not filling the gaps at the defensive line. They were taking care of their guys, and the linebackers were supposed to come up and fill those holes. I'd be curious to hear that kind of perspective from Gannon, if in fact that was the case. But there's definitely room to grow with that unit for sure. They obviously don't have a whole lot of experience playing together with each other. Singleton, we're expecting to be a bigger factor. He had a great year last year for sure. I want to see Edwards step up more. I want to see Sean Bradley grow at that position as well. They do have depth there if those guys can live up to a little bit of their potential. But look, there's no doubt when Howie Roseman goes down the positions and says, where am I going to spend money? We all know that's the last position he looks at. And you just hope that those guys that they do put in there can grow and fill in the position well. I think there's definite growth that needs to be had there. But as a unit, you saw that during the game. Now the question is, will they start off against the Niners at the same spot?
All right. Last kind of observation I want to get from you. I don't know if Zach Ertz, the hamstring thing, played a factor here, but I thought it was going to be an interesting storyline on what they did with Goddard, Ertz, and how they split those and who got more targets. What did you think of the way Sirianni utilized his two tight ends?
I think the hamstring did play a little bit of a factor late in the game as to why Ertz maybe didn't get a little bit more action, but I like the way that they were both being used, particularly early on. At times, he even went out to a 3 tight end set. And so what you saw, though, was, again, on the touchdown to Devonta Smith, it's overlooked, but Ertz provided essentially a pick without drawing a flag. That's a veteran play. You don't get that out of a younger player usually. Another veteran play, that long throw. If Hurts could have hit Ertz in stride on that throw down the sideline, that could have gone a long way. We actually would have had some Zach with some yak after that. But, yeah, it wasn't even a catch. They showed that. But Ertz with that veteran mentality again, quick get to the line. He was telling everybody, we got to snap this quick. And they really did. They avoided the opportunity for a review. You saw the value that Ertz has here as the veteran that he is. And I think, look, however they got through that tumultuous time, it was rocky there. I mean, obviously the Eagles and Ertz were not happy with each other. There was talk of trying to move on. The fact that they found some ground to be able to stick on and move forward, look, it helps this offense a huge deal. It helps this team. It helps the locker room. And you saw Ertz, the veteran, make veteran plays yesterday. And I look forward to seeing how he and Goddard can work together more down the road.
Full list of grades over at 973ESPN.com. Check out Grayson's grades after each and every Eagles game right here on the Sports Bash. And, of course, he's back for another season. You can see Scott on Fox 29 as well. And follow him on Twitter at SGraysonFox29 for everything that's happening with the Eagles this season. All right, Scott, good to see you, buddy.
All right, you too, Mike. Have a good one.
All right, there's Scott Grayson and his appearance today for today's Grayson's Grades on the Sports Bash. They're brought to you by Boardwalk Honda from Maine to Miami. Nobody beats the Boardwalk deal online, boardwalkhonda.com.